open your software, of course, it comes up to My Floriani Today. And this is, of course, where you can go in to put your software support ticket, like DJ told you. If you have questions outside the seminar, please go to software support. Now, if there are questions on how do I change the color, how would I create, please go to the forum for those questions and answers. The forum will get you your answer a lot faster than software support. Software support is more if you need another activation, if you're having problems with your program running properly, that's when you go to the software support. But you want to go to the forum when you have questions on the software itself, because you've got lots of people there. We have moderators, lots of people to help. So always go to the forum. Now I'm going to go ahead and come down here to create a new design, and I'm going to get that by left mouse clicking, and up comes my screen. Now we're going to talk about, first we're going to talk about Applique tonight. Applique is probably one of the hottest things on the market today. Applique is very, very popular. It also has a higher perceived value. When you do something in Applique, it looks like it's worth more than if it was solid stitches. So Applique is a very important part of our embroidery. Now we know it actually stitches faster. We use less thread. We use less stabilizer. It's much quicker for you and I to do applique. So it's a win-win situation. Now, how do we create applique? Well, to start with, we can come up to our custom shapes. And for those of you that listen to my weekly lessons, you know this is one of my favorite folders in our software. Now, I'm simply going to left mouse click on this, and my custom shapes are going to come up. Now, we will notice as we add new versions, when you get updates, you'll notice a lot of times we add new icons in here. We'll give you more shapes to play with. So if you've got a shape you're just dying to have, send it to us at our tech support, or ask on the forum. Tell us what shapes you'd like, because that always helps us. So I'm going to go through our shapes, and we're just going to kind of look through, and I am going to pick shape 003. I'm going to simply left mouse click on it, and it comes up. Now this is artwork. This is vector artwork, which means it's not pixelated. And let me show you what I'm talking about. If I get my zoom tool and I zoom in, do you notice how these are beautiful, clean, wonderful lines? Let me grab up here and go get one of our backdrops, one of our art. This is Raster Art. Now this is usually what you and I deal with. Let me bring up one of these, and now I'm going to zoom in on this well. Now do you notice this is made up of pixels of color, and of course this is very good raster artwork. It's a JPEG. This is very good because we give you good artwork in here, but it's still pixelated, which means it's going to have a change in color, it's going to have some dithering, and depending upon the artwork you bring in with JPEGs, it's usually a lot more pixelated looking than this. So let's go on back to our shape that we've brought in. Now I want to show you a few things that we've got in here. Now since this is artwork to start with, the first thing you do before you ever create from artwork is you make it the size you want it to be in its final state. Don't put stitches in here and then blow it up bigger or bring it down a lot smaller. Go ahead and decide what size, what you want. Now I'm going to go to the word transform. That's to resize. Now I want you to notice I'm in metric on my screen today. And I did that because I want you to see when you go into your properties box, you can select inches in here so that you work with inches right here, but it doesn't change my main, which is you can do it the opposite way. I could have this in inches, and if I wanted to work with millimeters in here, because it is a more precise measurement, I could tell this, just this part, to be millimeters. But I'm going to make this 6 inches. Now you notice the width height went to 6 inches also. That's because I have my maintain aspect ratio box selected. If that had been deselected, and I will deselect it, I could change these one at a time. But since I want this to stay proportional, That's why I had maintain aspect ratio. Now nothing is real until you click apply. Now that I've applied this, I'm going to fit it to screen. I have made this a lot larger. Now something that you may not be aware of with our artwork is we have given you a pin width, and this is really great. As you can see in my artwork here, I can see this very nicely. Used to, it was very, very small, and it was a very thin line, and sometimes that's not as clear as you would like. So by changing your pin width, it's not going to change the width of your stitches when you go ahead and create the applique, but it's a visual on screen that helps us. Now if I were going to edit this at all, if I wanted to edit this artwork shape, I would go ahead and make it very skinny so that when I came over and got my shape tool, it would be very easy for me to see all the nodes to change it. Whereas if this is it too, you can see they're not as easily seen to move them around. So having the ability to change the pin width is wonderful. Now I also could, I'm going to go back to select, I could also fill this, which would make it a solid shape. Now again, it's not going to change what happens when I turn it into stitches. I'm going to turn this into an applique. Being a solid shape, it's still going to do an applique around the edge. So let's go ahead and come to our one-click wonders down here at the bottom. Now my green bush is my applique tool, and I'm simply going to left mouse click on it, and that quickly I have created an applique. Now let's look at a little bit that we can do with this applique. Well, the first thing I want to do is I might want to audition the fabric I'm going to put in here to see what the thread color is going to look like against it. Let's go to fabric. I'm going to left mouse click on fabric, and I can come down and I can say, you know, I want this to look kind of silver. So, okay, I've got silver in here, so I already know what that's going to look like, which makes me notice that I really don't like this green around it. So I'm going to pick a different color for my applique finish. Now, we had a very good suggestion from one of our educators this week. When we're going to look for colors, we've got a scroll. We can type in a color. I could type in color 192. Find it and select it and work it. Now for some reason, but what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you why no colors came up down here, is because I have selected for my thread chart Kathy's Basic. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to my Floriani Poly, and you can see we've got our thread chart that have all of our colors. Now if I want to go to a different color palette or color wave, I can go ahead and scroll through them, and that is wonderful. However, if I want to come here and say, I want you to use Kathy's Basic thread chart, I've created a thread chart with the colors I usually use, and I could make several. But with this, I've got all my colors in front of me, and you can fill this whole thing up and just keep adding colors till you filled it up. So you can put a few blues, greens, yellows, you get the idea. So now that I have got this, I can come in here and select and say, you know what, I might want a gray outline around that, and I want it for color 3. Now let me show you what it's talking about. When we do an applique, you notice color 1 is going to be my placement line. Color 2 is going to be my tack down line, and you can see color 3 is my finish line. So when I come in here and say I want to change the color in my applique, and I say I want to change it to this gray, it's going to say which color do you want to change to gray? Well, I want it to change my finish color, 3 to gray. So now I've changed that to gray. So now you understand what that's asking you when you go to change the color. Now let's look at some other things we've got in here. Now of course we all know we can do a satin applique. Well, we can come and in our drop down I could select a blanket stitch. Now remember, you have to apply. Now I've applied that blanket stitch. You can see it here. I can change how much it bites in. Right now it's biting in, and let me show you what I'm talking about. This bite from here to here is 3 millimeters. Now I could make that bite more or less depending on my application. Now my blanket density is it's 3.5 millimeters between this bite and this bite. I could put those closer together. Let's say I had a minky fabric or something that frays a lot. I probably wouldn't pick a blanket stitch, but if I did, I would make it a little more dense so that it would bite more often. So you have that control. Now what I love about the Floriani software is I simply clicked my one-click wonder to applique and the box came up. So anything I can do is in front of me. I didn't need to know the questions to ask. So when I picked blanket, it tells me the only options you have, Kathy, is you can change the width of the bite or the density of the bite. And of course, I still have the option to change the fabric. Now we also can pick a motif. Now the minute I select motif, I want you to notice how wonderful. Now I've got all these motifs, so my applique doesn't have to look like everybody else's. I could come in here and say, I want this pattern. I'm going to left mouse click on it, and I can also change the size. Now let's stay at 3 millimeters right here and apply it. So you can see, now notice it says applique inset is 50%. So notice my motif is 50% on and 50% off. I could change this number. I could say make it 75, apply. So now it's 75% inset and 25% on the outside. So you could see how you can change this number depending on what your look is going to be. If you don't like the motif you picked, come pick a different one. Apply it. So now I've got a different motif, which are these hearts. Now they sure don't look good all the way in there, so I might go back and put them at 50%. So now they're half in, half off. Now the other option I have is I can make them larger. So I could say my stitch length, I want it to be 5 millimeters, and I'm going to have a larger motif shape. Now realize I am really zoomed in here. So remember, we zoom in and out on this screen. If I wanted to see this actual size, I would put it 1:1. And then if I wanted to see its look, I'm going to have to fit it to screen so you can see everything. I can say 3D and get a better idea. Now don't get confused with the 3D. You're asking it to give you a 3-dimensional image on a 2-dimensional screen. So realize this is an approximation. It's not exactly how it's going to look. Now we also have some options here I want to talk about. Now this is saying it's going to sew a placement line, and remember that was, when we looked at this, that was number 1, was our placement line. So let's go ahead and grab this again. Number 2 is my tack down line, and number 3 is my finish line. So you can see where these relate. Well, I might say, you know what, I don't want a tack down line. Apply that. And now notice I no longer have a tack down. I've only got the placement and the finish line. So know that when you're working with this, you have some choices. Now I'm going to take off the finish line and I'm going to apply. So right now, if I zoom in, what I've got is I've got a placement line and I have a tack down line. Now I'm going to go into Applique Extra to show you some really neat things about this. You know, one of the things I've always wanted in Applique is I wanted to be able to do raw edge applique on my machine and have it all work. And that has always been a challenge because I have asked, hey, can't you give me a run stitch in my motifs so I could do raw edge applique? But having your placement line and tack down line brought up another issue. So we have figured out how to do this wonderfully. Now the first thing is my placement line I need so I can place my fabric. Now what I want though is I want this to be my raw edge applique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my stitch length maybe to 3, and I'm going to say apply, so I'm going to have a longer stitch length here. Now here is something that I liked doing. Now you notice the offset on this is a 0.5 millimeters, so it's sitting inside this. Well now if I'm doing raw edge applique, I sure don't want my placement line showing. So what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to hit minus 0.5 and I'm going to apply that. Now you notice my placement line is right under my tack down line. So now this is a really nice raw edge applique. Now why I like this is I'm going to go ahead and cut my shape to the original placement line. I'm going to make my shape the right size. This is going to stitch down the placement line, so we will stitch down a placement line, and I'm sorry, I'm so zoomed in you can't see it. I'm going to go ahead and start stitching down my placement line. Now I would have actually created a template that I would have cut this out the original size. Then I would have laid it, this would have stitched down on my fabric and I would have laid it right over the top of it, which means it would have just extended right along the outside edge of this line. So when I stitch down my raw edge look right on top of that, it's going to have the look of raw edge applique. Now note, you could actually in this applique, you could put that line in as much as you want. It doesn't have to be just 0.5. It could have been in 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. That is all up to you. Now let's go ahead and go back to 0 here and apply, because I want to show you what I would have done. Now let me make sure that there's nothing else I wanted to show you on this real quick. Well, I am going to show you one other thing before I go to showing you how to create the template. I also want to show you another feature we have under Applique Extra, and that is, you notice my tack down, I did a run because I was doing the raw edge applique look. But if you wanted to have it look like a tackle twill, you want to put a zigzag around that, or maybe you're working with Minky and you want your tack down line to be a zigzag to kind of hold that better before you go over it with your finish. I can come in here and tell this to be a zigzag. Now notice the minute I selected zigzag, because our software is so intuitive, it knows that we don't always know the questions to ask. So what my software has done here for me is it has said, okay, now that you've set a zigzag, how do you want it to work? The width of this zigzag is 3 millimeters. The density is it's 2.5 millimeters. Remember, this is the length of the zigzag. This is how close it is together. Now I'm going to apply that. So now I've got a nice zigzag tack down around here. Now if I was using Minky, something that was fluffy and was going to well, I can't think of the word, fray, that was going to fray a lot, I would want to make this kind of tack down before I finished it off with my satin stitch. Or maybe I'm going to do like tackle twill. I'm going to put a very large letter or number on a jersey or something, and if you ever look at those, you'll notice they have this weird zigzag around the edge. Well, you could create that same look by using the tack down without a finish. So I'm going to apply this right now. I'm going to come back to Applique, and I'm going to go ahead and put a finish line on it, and I'm going to put that as a satin. So you can see if I had a fabric that frayed a lot or was like Minky, I've been working with Minky lately, so that's on my mind as a real pain in fabric for applique. But if you have the ability to set that tack down line is that wonderful zigzag, then what happens is there's my placement line. It's going to really hold that minky down good. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my satin stitch over the top of it. And that's going to help you with a lot of problems that you have. I also like this with silk. However, with silk, I don't have it at a 2.5 density because that is really close. On the silk, I just need it to be held down. So I might put a 2.5 bite. And on the density, I might make that about a 3.5. Now with the minky, I wanted it closer because of the way it fluffs and frays. But silk, if I had it just that close, let's go and take our finish line off, you'll see that would work just fine on a nice silk. So know that you can adjust that. That is fantastic, having that ability. You can adjust the bite. You have full control over this. I mean, total control gives you total control. So this is great with appliques. Now the last thing I want to show you about an applique, and I'm going to put our finish line back, is I am going to show you on an applique what I do. Because I will tell you right now that professional embroiderers do not trim in the hoop. We don't trim shapes in the hoop. So if I come over here to my sequence view, and I'm going to go ahead and close my properties box for a moment, and I love this. If I close my properties box, my sequence view I can see real good. If I want my properties box to come back up, I just come over here on my top toolbar and I click properties. So this is a very easy way to be able to really look at your sequence view instead of looking at it in a short squished up view. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right mouse click on the applique and I'm going to say break it up. I'm ready. I'm not going to do any more applique adjusting. I'm ready to stitch it. So right now I want you to break it up. Now notice when it broke it up, I've now got my run stitch, my little zigzag, which is a steal. It's just a steal with a wide density. And then I've got my finish, my satin finish. Well, I'm going to left mouse click on the eyeball to close this one, and all I have is my placement stitch. Now, if I made this from my pattern, this is the exact size that my applique piece should be. So with that, I'm going to select it. I'm going to right mouse click copy. I'm going to open a new piece of paper, right mouse click and paste. Now what I've done is I have just created a template to cut my fabric by. So let's go to File, Print Preview. Now in my print preview I've got full control again. I'm going to go to my settings. I do not need to see my crosshair. I don't need my color analysis, and I'm good with the rest. Now watch when I say OK. Now I've just got one page to print. This I will print on Applique Wonder sheets. It will run through your printer. It will print this. Then I will cut out around this, iron it onto the back of my applique fabric because Applique Wonder is fusible on one side. I will iron it on, and then I will stitch out my placement line, peel the back off, and stick it down and do my finish. Now this is a symmetrical shape. It's identical all over. However, if this were a weird shape, as soon as I brought it in, I would have mirror imaged it. Why? Because we have to mirror image if we're going to iron something on the back of our applique fabric. So this kind of shows us some of the stuff with applique that we can do. Now I want to move on, and I want to talk to you a little bit about our lettering. And the reason being is I learned some stuff that I didn't know this week about our lettering. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just click on my text tool. T is for text. Let me move this down so you can see that good. T is for text, so I'm going to left mouse click on it. I want just regular text for this. Now I'm going to, you notice there's an A stuck to my cursor, so I know that I'm obviously working with text, and I'm going to left mouse click on screen. So I've brought up text. Now I'm going to type in Floriani, and I am going to apply it. Now I'm also going to make this 25 millimeters because this is in millimeters right now. Remember, everything I've got is in millimeters right now. 25 millimeters is an inch, and I just think of 4/4 to a dollar. That's how I remember 25 millimeters to an inch. And I'm going to apply. Now, what you would do is, of course, let me fit this to screen too for you. You're going to pick what font you want. Now, I have Daniel picked because that's the one I actually had been playing with, and that's the one I wanted for this exercise. So you're going to pick your font, but I want you to notice some of these fonts have an O by them. Now, I knew O was for outline, but I didn't realize all the ability DJ had snuck in there. I just thought that would give us an outline. Well, wait till I show you the fun. So when you have an O next to a font, I want you to notice you have a style box. And again, if it shows up, you've got something available to do. Now, I wouldn't have known this question to ask. So I dropped this down to make it an outline, and I look like, wow, look at this. I can make this a run, apply. So now this is a simple run stitch. How beautiful is that? How many times have we wanted something like that? Now I can also come in here and say, you know what? Make this all an applique. I'm going to apply that. Now you're going to find that's a little bit wide, but see, now that I told it to be an applique, look what happened. My applique options came up, so I could say, you know what? I need this to be a little less wide here. So I could change the width of that satin because I have that option. I can also come down and say make this a default, which means the regular text with a run border around it. How cool is this? This is with all the fonts that have a little O in front of them. Now, I was thinking when I did this, I thought, well, I've got that. Now, what else would I like to do? Let me get my color chart up. I thought, you know, well, that's cool, and I like it, and I'll 3D it. But the thing is I can barely see, and I'm sure I can see that there's a little run outline around there. Well, what if I wanted that to be a different color? So what would we do? Let's fit it back to the screen. The first thing I would have to do is select my text. Now, I want you to notice I'm on the 3D view. I can edit in 3D. A lot of programs will not allow you to edit in 3D. I usually don't like to because it's you know, it's trying to make it all look fluffy for me. It's trying to give it that three-dimensional look. So I don't always like to edit in 3D, but it's nice to know you can because sometimes it is a nice a function to have that ability. Now what I'm going to do is this is text. Now if I've done everything I want to do to this text, I'm not changing anything else, I can now right mouse click and tell it to break up text. Now let me tell you something. The minute you break this text up, it's no longer a font. It looks like one, it tastes like one, and it smells like one, but it will now become a design and it will have design pieces. So I'm going to break up this text and you're going to notice what happens. Now watch in my sequence view. I'm going to close this properties so my sequence view jumps up for me. Let's left mouse click on our plus and I want you to notice. Now see, now this is a design with all its components. There is my solid, there's my run. I'm going to change this run. Now there's my solid, here's my run. I'm going to change this one to another color. There's my run. Now of course your O has an inside and an outside. So there you go, inside, you do the outside. I'm going to just continue to go down. And I mean, you can have some real fun with this. I mean, I think this is way cool. And I just like the idea that I can do something really different because I have that and I've broken up the text to do this. Remember, I can't go back and ever treat it as text. It is now a design. And that's something you always have to remember. So how fun is that? So now I can see and I can do some fun things with the ability to outline any alphabet that has the little O around it. Now, there are different things with different alphabets, I will tell you. Now, I've picked Daniel here. Let's go back and let's get our text tool again. I'm going to click on screen, and I'm going to type in Floriani again. And we're not going to do Daniel. We're going to pick a different one. Let's pick bridal. Now notice I've got my run. Now I've got a satin. I didn't have that option with Daniel. I only had run, applique, or default with run. So in this one, I have the ability to make that a satin. So again, you're going to come in, and you know what? Not only am I going to make that a satin, I think I'm going to make it larger. So satin larger and apply. Now this is real scrolly, and I did it all capitals, which we wouldn't do, but you get the idea. This is really cool because now it's a satin. I can come back, I can make it a run, just like we were doing before. And of course I could do it with applique or a default with run. So you have different options with different ones of them. They all can be turned to a run, they can all be turned to an applique, and they can all have the outline around them. So you can have some real fun with that. So one of our educators, Mark, mentioned that, you know, that means that if we've got 170 fonts, when you start adding that you've got 3 and 4 options with each of these, that gives us well over 200 fonts because you have a lot of things that you can do to manipulate those fonts. Now let's come back. I'm going to actually select this and delete it. I'm going to stay in here with my Floriani for a minute. Because I just want to talk to you a little bit about lettering. Now, notice I have lost all of my control point. Oh, never mind. I forgot. Just like I told you, this is no longer lettering. It is not. It's a design. So I need to come back, and let's go ahead and create lettering again. I've left mouse clicked on screen. We are going to go away from the bridal font, and we are going to go back to Daniel. Right here, and I'm going to apply Mr. Daniel, and I'm going to make him Floriani. Apply. Now, with text, you notice when it comes in with all of its control points. That is nothing spectacular. Everybody's software does that. However, I just want to show you a few things about ours. Let me zoom out a bit so we can look at this a little bit. Now, the first thing I want to tell you, if you don't realize, I've lost all my control points. So I'm going to select it by using my select tool. Then I'm going to go ahead and left mouse click on my text icon again. And notice all my control points will come back. So you don't lose them. You may lose them for the moment, but you can always recall them. Now let me show you some things on our text to explain the points, the control points. Now you notice to the bottom right there's a little arrow. Now this is because sometimes we want to make our text longer to fill a wider space, but we don't necessarily want it taller. My husband has a shirt, his pocket's 5.5 inches wide, and I want it to match the top of that pocket and be 5.5 inches wide. Well, if this is only, let's change this to imperial because I can't think that fast. Okay, the width on this is 5 inches. So I might need to make it, I want to make it 5.5. I want to drag it longer, but I don't want to make it taller. So you can see I've even made it 6 inches. I did not ruin any of the integrity of this lettering. The O didn't misshape, the A didn't close, it held its integrity. By the same token, if I wanted to make this shorter, I could bring this in, and again, notice I have not compromised the integrity of any of the letters. Okay, let's just come back out kind of where we were when we started. So that's cool. Now if you look at the arrow at the top left-hand corner, this will change your height and width proportionately. So I can use that. Now my little diamond at the bottom, this is fun. You can tilt your letterings, kind of italicize it. So you can have fun with that. Fun effects, play with your letterings. See what all you can do. You have a whole lot of ability with Floriani. Now notice my little circle in the center. I can pull it down and elasticize my lettering. So we can play with that. You can come back and play now. Undo is our friend, of course. We could go back. And I also could do pennant style lettering. In the four corners, you'll see the black squares. Grab your black square. Work with pennant type lettering. Start playing. Have a good time with it. Now, something I absolutely love about Floriani lettering. Now, you will see in between each letter, you have got a blue diamond. Now, these are kerning icons, and everybody has them. This is no special ability, but what is special is sometimes you just want to change the space between two letters. Now, this name is beautifully balanced. Can you imagine? Mr. Floriani would have a perfectly balanced name, but if you have a V next to an A, an L next to a T, sometimes the space in between them looks weird. Now, mathematically, the space between each one of these letters is the same, but it doesn't always have the visual of looking good. Now, I can grab my kerning icon and I can change the distance. Let's change the distance between the O and the L. Now, I'm going to bring this in closer. Now, do you notice all my letters move like a choo-choo train? How cool is that? Because what has happened usually to us is we move one letter, now I got to move this one, then I got to move the I, then the A, then the N, then the I, and we spend all day agonizing over the space between the letters. With Floriani, they will hold together because remember, we are a commercial software, and that means fast and efficient. What that comes across to you is it's easy. We want everything to be easy. That's why my one-click wonders give you your stitch type. Then you come in here and all your options that are available are right there in front of you. So you can come in here and you can play with lettering. So look at that to play with it. Now we have one other one I want to talk about, and that is your rotate icon. So it is rotating, of course, from the center of the letter. So you can see that it's rotating from the center. So you can have fun with rotate as well. Now the only other icon on here, or control point, excuse me, is the orange box. That allows you to pull a letter off its baseline. This is huge. You can pull it off its baseline. Now for instance, in this lettering, I'm going to pull the F off. And then I'm going to decide I want that F to be larger. How many times have you wanted to do a larger letter to start with and the rest of it be a smaller? Well, what you have to do in most softwares, you have to type in the F, put it on screen, then you have to type in Floriani and bring it to screen. With Floriani, you can do anything you want with each letter individually, even though you brought them in all at the same time. I can rotate it, resize it, move it around. This makes it so easy for you to make a fun shirt of some fun text that you've done all on your own. Now that brings me to one other thing I wanted to show you that I think is really that we overlook quite often. In Floriani, sometimes, let's say that this lettering, let's select everything on here. I'm going to select all items. Let me get my little thread chart up. Okay, let me make this white lettering. Now, you can't see that. So sometimes you've got lettering or something on your screen that is kind of the same color as your background. So what I want to show you is you can come down to the bottom icon on the left-hand side to your background color. Now, you've got two choices, color or fabric. First, we're going to look at color. So I could say make this gray so I can see my white lettering. So that's one way. But let's say I'm doing a towel. I'm doing something. And I want to know how that lettering is going to look on that fabric. So again, I can come here and say fabric. And I can go through fabric that I'm talking about. Let's say I'm going to put this on an orange velvet. Now I can see what this would look like on orange velvet. Turn off my grid, and that's what it would look like on my orange velvet towel. So a lot of times you can see if it's going to look good, because you sure hate it when you've stitched out something on a shirt or something and the color just wasn't quite right. You thought it would look good. Well, by having the ability to pick a fabric look as your background, it gives you a much better idea of what that color is going to look like on that fabric. So that is a real plus to being able to pick your fabric. Being able to pick your background color is fun too, but being able to actually put in the fabric makes it a lot easier. And of course, you can always add fabrics in. My preferred method is go to the manufacturer's website. They have the JPEGs all cropped and ready for you, and you can download those. Of course, you can bring in your own JPEGs as well and add them to your fabric library. That's a lesson for another day, but I wanted to tell you you can do that. Now let's look at some more stuff with lettering here that I wanted to talk about. Now I am going to put my screen back to a color. I'm going to put it back to white. Okay, and I'm going to bring my grid back up. I want to talk to you about a couple of the other options in our text. Now I'm going to again click on text. Now I want you to notice something we did with our latest update if you haven't noticed yet. Everything doesn't have all the little drop-down arrows that you have to zero in on, like, you know, pinpoint, no matter how bad your eyes are. So now we have you click on the main icon and it brings all the options to you. Same way with my wizards. Just click on the wizard hat and all of them come up. You'll notice my artwork has changed. My artwork tool changed a little bit. Instead of being a rectangle or a circle here, and with a drop down, now I just click on it and there's all my custom shapes. It makes it so much more simple for you. We're always looking for easy. Now let's click on this text tool and I'm going to bring in the circle. Now I'm bringing this one in because this one creates a little bit of confusion sometimes. Notice you have upper and lower. That means what's going to come across here and what's going to go around the bottom. So I'm going to type in my text and I'm going to type in Floriani on the bottom. I have to spell it right or I'll get fired. Okay, so there's my text in Floriani. I'm going to make the height of these letters about 1/2 inch and I'm going to apply. Now I'm going to fit this to screen so you can see it. And you know what? I'm going to bring in, let me see, what am I going to bring in? I'm going to come up to my symbols and I'm just going to bring in a little symbol here. Let's see, I'm going to bring in a basketball. And I'm just going to bring in a basketball, except, I can't find my, well, this is interesting. I can't find my apply or OK button. All right. Oh, I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm sorry. I pick my symbol and I have to click on screen. I don't know what I was thinking. Excuse me. It's nice to know, though, that you're not the only ones that are confused sometimes. I'm going to put this little basketball in the middle. Now, when I click on my text on my circle, and I've lost my control points, so what am I going to do? I'm going to come right back here and click on them. Now, I might want this a little closer to my basketball. So how am I going to do that? Well, right here in the center, you've got a rotate icon. But that also allows you to change the circumference of your circle. So I can bring my circle in tighter on that. Everything else works the same. If I want to spread my letters out, I'm going to grab the icon at the end of my lettering. If I want to resize them proportionately, I'm going to grab the icon at the beginning of my lettering. Again, you've got your ability to use your kerning tool to change the space in between your lettering. And of course, you can pull anything off that you want to. So you have all the same abilities, but what usually has people confused is how to change the circumference of the radius, circumference, I don't know which is the correct word, but how to make your circle larger or smaller, closer to your design or bigger than. And that's through this rotate icon. Now you notice I can rotate it. So I can move it straight up and down and I keep everything centered, or I could rotate it if I wanted to rotate and have a different look with my lettering. So that is how you use that circle lettering. Now let's get a new piece of paper. Let's come back to the text. Vertical text speaks for itself. It's going to go vertically. This is a wonderful, I wanted this desperately for several years. It's so nice to know I have it now. And of course I can come in here and, you know, kern the letters individually that might need to be a little closer, but you can see we've got the vertical text as well. Now the last thing on this text I want to talk about on our text that we've got here is I want to talk about our path. Now I'm going to left mouse click on screen and I can pick a path and I can have my text follow it. Floriani is fun. And I can apply that. Now once I apply that, it is following my line. Now again, all the control points work the same. Let's fit this to screen. It all works the same. We have all the same control points. Now something I do like that I think is really, really cool, let's zoom out some. Let's zoom out a lot. Okay, of course I can come in here and move this together. I can move it farther apart. You know, you've got your whatever. I can make it bigger, both height and width. I can do that as well. What I can also do is I can change this baseline. By right mouse clicking on it, I can edit the baseline. So I could change the path of this. Right mouse click when I do that and it changes to follow the path I've put on it. So that is what I wanted to show you in that part of our text. Now I do want to come in and I also want to talk to you about importing Truetype artwork. Now this is different in everyone's computer because you have different fonts installed in your computer depending upon what you have, what programs you have installed. Now I'm going to stay with Arial. Now I could go in here and I could select a different font. Like I said, we all have different fonts in our computer to pick from. I'm going to stay with Arial for this exercise. And I've got my name typed here and I'm going to say OK. Now when this comes in again as vector art. This is artwork. Now what you can do is once it's come in, you come down here with your one-click wonders and you decide what you want to do to this artwork. Well, a lot of times we want to turn it into a satin stitch. Well, I want to tell you when you work with a satin stitch, I'm going to tell you which one to pick to make it easy, because that's our goal, easy. And the best way to do it, I'm going to close my properties so we can see our items real good. You notice this is actually created each letter separately. Now if I select the whole thing, I can convert everything at once. However, when you're working with a satin stitch and angles and everything, you don't want to convert them all at once. You want to convert them letter at a time. So if I wanted to make this a satin, I'm going to select my K, and the satin you're going to pick is the last one. You're going to pick Auto Satin. Why? Because it's going to put all the angle lines in for you. It's going to put in the starts and stops. It's going to do it the best way possible. Now, if you are a master digitizer, you might want to do it yourself different. But as the majority of us are, the majority of us aren't at Walter's level, so pick your nice Auto Satin. Pick your A, Auto Satin. Pick your T, Auto Satin, and you can see it's doing a beautiful job because I'm using the Auto Satin. That's what we want to look at. Now undo is my best friend, right? Okay, so I'm going to select all of this and I'm just going to click the satin stitch. Oops, I'm sorry. And see how it just put an outline? Why? Because now it wants me to start setting my angle lines. It wants me to tell it where to start and stop. So it's expecting me to know on all of these exactly what I want to do. Well, to be real honest with you, as much as I've worked with Walter and as much as I've learned, I would not want to go through this way. So I'm going to simply do it the way I told you. I'm going to let Auto Satin be rule for me. Auto Satin is my guy. Now, I wanted to talk about this one, about using our Truetype text. Now, of course, I could have said be a run stitch. Again, we've done the Auto Satin. I could have said be a fill, be a fancy fill, be a motif fill, You know, I could have gone through all this, or I could have said, you know what, I want you to be an applique. Now, the minute I make it an applique, I need to bring my properties back and work with that. So you can see, you can take your Truetype fonts and you can do a whole lot with them and play with them and have a real good time with them. Now, the last one I wanted to talk about, because I think we're almost at time and I can already hear DJ's getting nervous here that I'm going to go over, but I'm not. I'm going to go, and I want to show you the other thing I want to talk to you about on lettering is our monogram. So I'm going to come in here and click on monogram and left mouse click on screen. Now I want you to know something. You can use absolutely any font you want and create a monogram. However, Walter, being the master, has selected the best alphabets to use as a monogram. There are certain alphabets that work best. So he has gone through and picked those. Now, anytime you see an alphabet that has decor around it, such as the Graphia monogram, then that means you can dress it up. It's had decor digitized to match the font. So that can look really nice. It makes it look really pretty. It goes with it. So you can come in there. Now, of course, the first thing you do is pick your letters. Okay, so you've got your letters. Pick your height. How big do I want this monogram? I'm happy with all of that. Okay, I'm going to apply. Now, if I didn't like the decor, I could come in here and pick maybe a different decor would look better with those letters in my name. But you can come in here and play around with these monograms. Now let's go in here and pick one that doesn't have decor. I can come in here and pick Devonshire. This incidentally looks very nice on masculine luggage tags and stuff. This is a real nice decor for that. You can come in here. Now maybe I wanted to add something to it. So I could come up here and come to my symbols, and I could look around and I could find me some kind of, I don't know, let's pick this flourish. Now I could come in here and I could transform this flourish. I could make it smaller. I might want to come in here and say, I want it to be, I'm going to make it different. I might want it 2 inches wide, but I only want it, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch tall. So I can distort this to give me some kind of pretty artwork put under it. Now once I've done that, since this is artwork, I'm going to have to do something with it. I'm going to have to turn it into a stitch. Now I might do a steal. Change my width. That width is too big. You can come in here and realize you have all kinds of possibilities with your lettering, with your applique. I hope tonight you've seen some new stuff. I hope you've learned some new things. There's one other thing I just want to point out because I can't stand it. It's not on tonight's thing, but it's something I am having so much fun with. I'm going to come into my library real quick, and I'm going to go to my free Floriani designs. And remember, to go into my Floriani Club to pick up your free designs. I'm going to go into June 2015, and I'm going to come over here to my designs. Oops, that's July. No, that is June. I'm sorry, I don't want to go into that. You know, aren't these cool, though? These are this month's free designs. Aren't they awesome? I just love them. I actually wanted to go into May. There they are, May 2015, and there's my designs. And I want to pull in one of these designs. Now we have a new tool. We've got more than one new tool, but I just want to point out one before I have to go. I am having so much fun with my color play. This is a new icon that you have. I want you to click on it. Now what this does is it's got all the colors listed. I can lighten. It's going to stay within the same color wave, but it's just going to give you the next darker, 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 darker. So you get that. Now I can reset it to the original. Now let's say that I want to change everything but the color of the sand, or I guess it's a golf green. I'm going to deselect the line, and I'm going to tell it do everything else random. Now you notice it didn't touch my green. And I'm going to say random again, random again. So it's randomizing every color except the green. So you can come in here and it never repeats itself. You just keep going until you find a color wave you really like. But it saved that green, and why I think that is so neat. What if I had a flower? I could keep the stem and leaves, and I could change the tops of all the flowers to maybe do a runner, to do a curtain across, all kinds of fun. But by doing that, you can do that. If I thought, oh, I really like that last one, and I told you it's not going to repeat, you can step back, step back. So you can go forward and back, and they are unlimited to how many you've done. Obviously, I could step back till I got to my original color, and once I'm there, there's nowhere back. I can't go back anymore. But you can come through and play, tell it what colors you want it to change, the colors you don't want it to change. I don't want it to change the white on my sandals, but I want to randomize all the others. So you can see how much fun this is. So play with this. This is hours of fun all by itself. I'm having so much fun with this option. Now we are at 7 o'clock, so I have reached my limit. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I hope you learned about how many options we have in our lettering and our applique. Our applique is simply phenomenal, and I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. I want to thank our moderators. I want to thank Karen V., our tech support, DJ Anderson for putting in all these new wonderful features, and for continuing to educate me when I don't know what I've got. So thank y'all. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Kathy, and I just wanted to let you know that you are getting rave reviews for tonight's webinar. A lot of people have typed in that all their questions have been answered. They've been waiting for a webinar like this, so great job. And if you want to watch it again, it should be available within the next 24 to 48 hours if you log on to myfloriani.club. But thank you, Kathy. You did a wonderful job. And thank you, everybody who attended tonight. And we look forward to seeing you next time in our next webinar. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks.